tonight's not just one guest, but two. They are actually a couple. Their names are Julie and David Bulitt. And I found them recently and thought this is such an interesting combination because Julie is a family therapist and David is a divorce attorney, which is wild. So let me just make sure that they are here. I just was talking to Julie like a couple of minutes ago, but I want to make sure she knows how to get on right. There they are. Okay, good. All right, so Julie and David, I operates with us, and I see you sent a request to be in. Let's see if this works too. Okay. Hopefully, so it's such a relief. All right,
Always.
you guys, this work? Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes. So we just have our disclosure that we have 3 grandchildren and 3 dogs in our house. So we're trying to find a quiet place, but it may not be quiet.
That's okay. That's okay. No problem. We're all just like, this is how it is. This is real life. So that's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, but thank you so much for coming on. I was just saying that I, found you guys like a month ago or something and thought, what an interesting pair. And even though you two try to keep relationships together, right? And
we try. Yes.
we don't do the opposite, but we deal with the opposite. I love that you've got the therapeutic background and the divorce attorney together, and you're a couple in real life, like my partner Chris and I, which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on. Before you introduce yourselves officially, I just want to get right to one of the things we talked about when we talked privately. David, what is the law of unintended consequences?
Well, for anyone who's been a parent, or anyone who does the work that I do, that you have to follow a general rule, and that rule is that when you make a decision, something is likely to happen that you didn't intend. So whether it's parenting, whether it's in your relationship with your partner, whether it's being a lawyer like I am and representing clients, or maybe in the work, that you and Chris do, when you make a decision or when you give advice, I have found it's taken me a long time to figure it out, is that stop for a moment and think about what could happen that I'm not really planning for or I'm not really expecting. And those of us, like I said, who do what I do, you live in that world, the law of unintended consequences.
Yep. Yeah. There's no guarantees of anything, especially in our community, except maybe child support, if everyone is honest with their numbers, because there's a calculator. But everything else we say, you never know.
Yeah.
And even that can be fiddled around with, as you know. So
yeah. I work with a lot of clients on what can you control in your life as a therapist. And sometimes it boils down to you don't have control over anybody but yourself. And sometimes that's iffy too.
Yeah,
right.
True. All right.
Yes.
So why don't you guys now formally introduce yourselves and tell everybody what exactly you guys do?
Sure. Sure. So I am a family and marriage therapist for over 35 years, and I work with individuals, couples. I've done group work, and I love what I do. I feel like I am so honored to be invited into people's lives and have them tell me their deepest, darkest fears, concerns, and all that stuff. So I've been a therapist for years and years and years and love it. And my better half over here.
That's the first time you've ever referred to me as your better half. But
yes.
This is going to be taped, right? So I can pull this back.
It is being recorded right now and posted right after, so we'll have proof.
Go back on live. So I've been a divorce lawyer now for 37 years, doing almost exclusively family law since the late 1990s. And Julie and I raised 4 children, 4 daughters, 2 of whom are biological, 2 of whom are adopted. Our youngest and our oldest bookends are biological, and our 2 middle girls are adopted, and they are biological siblings themselves. We adopted them at different times, both at birth. And so, during the years that we've had our practices, we've had our own issues personally with our family, with our children, with finances, with intimacy, with various other things. And 7 or 8 years ago, this led to a discussion that we had on the beach having a cocktail or two, and we started talking about, we have the same discussions in our offices with people, just from a different perspective. We talk about the same things, a lot of the same things, many of the same things. And so that led us to writing our first book, and that led us to the work that we do together, and have done since then.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I again, like, I love the combination. All right. So you know that Chris and my Chris, who's not on camera, but probably here somewhere, we work specifically with people getting out of toxic relationships, dealing with high conflict divorce, custody battles, and we say co-parenting hell, to help them have the chance of the best outcome in family court and beyond, because then there's part two, all the co-parenting stuff. And I know one thing that our clients deal with that I'm sure both of you are very familiar with is bullies. And so we talked about, I think, David, it was you that said we need to figure out a way to hit back.
Yeah.
But we have to be so careful because there's something called presentation, especially in terms of court and whether you're in court or out of court. But when you're in the midst of some kind of legal thing, we always say it's like you're under the court's microscope. So I don't know if either of you wants to comment on how to deal with bullies effectively, hitting back, but not being too aggressive
Well,
when there's all these other people watching who can really have influence on your family's future.
well, in the divorce arena, as you know, and you work there, there's a lot of time between when people separate or prior to their separation, when they're actually ever in front of a judge. And what I learned at a young age, being a lawyer, also frankly as a kid, to be honest with you, and sometimes you can apply lessons you learn as a child to those that you practice as a professional, and that is that I've never met a bully who could stand up to being hit back, who could stand up to being stood up to. They don't like it, they're not used to it, they respond defensively. Now the problem that you have in the arena that you're talking about is you have to be careful about what that means. If you assume that proposition to be correct, what does that mean, and how do you do it in such a way that you don't look badly under the microscope, of a courtroom? And that can be a difficult, row to hoe. But bullies are prevalent in our society, as you well know, and they come in all shapes, sizes, and genders, and but they have certain similar qualities. And so I tell people, you have to stand up, you have to fight, you have to let them know they're not going to keep doing to you what was done to you over the last 5 years, 10 years, whatever it was. But like you said, it is difficult, particularly if you have children, to try to fight that fight without damaging. You have the collateral damage of your kids and your family and your job and the other stuff. It can be tough.
Right. Okay. So give me a couple of ideas.
Well, it's so funny because this is really his domain, but I have so many
He's always
things.
got ideas.
I have so many things. I don't give out legal advice, but I sleep with a lawyer, so I sometimes think that by osmosis I should be able to give legal advice. But I'm thinking a couple things come to my mind as you're talking about bullies, and for me and the work that I do with my clients, I'm thinking boundaries, and I'm thinking how important it is to have boundaries with people that are bullies, and then also kind of taking it a step further and really thinking about how and why are these people bullies, and really understanding where they came from. And I know, it's probably really hard to do when you're dealing with somebody that's your ex or soon to be ex, and you're so angry and they're doing these things, but they're usually doing these things out of something that happened to them in their lives. Either they felt powerless or they were bullied or something like that. So I almost think you can get the upper hand if you can kind of do some perspective taking and kind of look to see what happened to them. What happened to this person that they are so, up in your face, bullying you, trying to control you. And I think you can get some power back if you can understand kind of what's behind it.
So you've touched on one of the many places that Julie and I look at things differently.
Yes.
All right. Didn't
Great.
take you long for 6 minutes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So she focuses very much, and understandably so, and probably correctly so in a lot of ways. Why? Right? Why is this person like that? How did they get that way?
Yeah.
And if you can understand that, you can understand your behavior. But in the heat of the work that I do, there's not a lot of time for thinking about whys. All
Yep.
right,
Same as the work that we do. I'm like, that's
you've
great, but I
got
need
to react.
strategy.
That's right. You've got to react and you've got to move. And so this, and frankly, it's made me, a better lawyer in a lot of ways because some of what she says makes a lot of sense. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But you do have to be able to act and not worry about the why. I know we're on Instagram, so I can say words I might not be able to say in a different interview, right? But I mean, if somebody's an asshole, okay, or somebody is a son of a bitch, all right. That's what they are. I got to deal with what they are today, not why they got there over 40 years. I understand that there might be reasons and there might be various symptomology and reasons, but I got a client or I've got to represent someone who has to deal with this today. All right. And there's not a lot of time for talking to that significant other about, oh, you had such a poor relationship with your parents. Maybe that's why, you locked me out of the house and threw my clothes on the front yard, or won't let me have the keys to the car, or won't let me have access to our bank account, or took away my credit card. I so I get what she's saying, but again, in our world and yours too, to some degree, is what do we do to help those people in the moment? Julie's strategy is it's a longer digging in. You got to dig in, and then you will make progress. So I think you can do both. I think you can.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is really helpful to understand what you're dealing with. Because I know when people learn about what a personality disorder looks like, it's a relief because it's like, oh my gosh, I thought it was just me in this really difficult situation. Another thing that's helpful, like with what Julie, you said, is I don't I don't feel sorry for my ex or the clients I mean our clients' exes either, but I feel like I could recognize that something is off and that they are not the same as some of the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so it's hard one thing that's helpful is to know that they don't have the same values as we do, and we can't project our own values onto that person because they're different
Right.
for whatever reason.
Right.
Instead of just assuming like we all, want the same thing and we have to approach it from the same way.
Right. And they might be missing something that you think that they should have or that a human being should have, but understanding that they may not, right? And so not expecting the next move to make sense
Right.
or their behavior to
Exactly.
make sense. But I mean, from my perspective as a therapist, it gives you power to understand somebody's behavior, and
Yeah.
that may be the only power you have in this relationship with this person. So
Right.
I feel like digging in and trying to understand, where it's coming from, what it is, what might be missing is important.
Yeah, I agree with you there because for us, they become more predictable when you understand, because a lot of people with certain issues act the same. Like for example, even addiction, we know
Yeah.
there's certain behaviors associated with that we can
Yep.
predict. One of them is that they're not going to act in their own best interest because their judgment is impaired. So
Right.
dealing with that differently rather than thinking, okay, we're all going to be logical. No, one person at least one in this room is not going to be logical. So how can we already plan to handle this differently and
Right.
focus on that person's priorities to get to the goal? What was I going to say about?
One of the dogs chirping at us. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
no, that's okay. That's okay.
They want to be heard too.
Yeah.
They have some ideas of how to help here.
Uh-huh.
You got to translate. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So we got a question a couple of minutes ago, and I wonder if either of you wants to address it. We probably got something after this, but I've been holding my screen to make sure I get it. It says abusers are excellent at falsely representing a calm, cool, collected persona, and victims can appear, quote, more emotional, end quote, because their stakes are more likely tied to the well-being of their kids. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's true. And the heart, see, again, from a lawyer standpoint, and in the world that I work in these types of situations, it's easy to tell somebody what they should do, right? Here's what you do. I can tell you what you do, which is you don't react. What they want is they want a reaction. They want you to be upset. They want you to be angry. They want you to call your lawyer. So you spend $400 for your lawyer to send an email that nobody gives a shit about, right? That's what they want to do. They want to get those rises out of you. So don't do it. You look right back at them, or you ignore them, or you laugh. Sometimes that can. Now, easy advice to give. Not so easy to take and to apply, in the moment. But if you can do that, if you can, and this is where the therapy piece comes in, to be honest with you. I'm an expensive therapist, and I don't pretend to be one, although I do sleep with one.
You can give out advice because you sleep with one.
But I mean, this is where her side of the world is helpful, right? It's helpful because the coaching aspect comes from the mental health person. The strategy piece should be coming from a skilled family lawyer or someone who does the work that you do, who understands. You might not be able to help them with the tools to apply that advice, right?
Yeah.
But you can certainly give them the advice because you know what's going to work. We know in this world what works with bullies. I know it. I could close my eyes. I can tell you 1 through 10, it'll work. But can you do it? Can you
Yeah.
do it?
One
It's
of the
hard.
things we use, because my background is in education, and also Chris and I have a sense of humor, is we make all kinds of little props for our clients. So as you were talking about holding back because you know that the other side is trying to bait you, we have a picture of a beagle with a big muzzle on its face. And so we often hold it up to our clients and are like, you rein it in, like we got to put the muzzle on you. So
Yeah.
all right. Another thing, we got another question.
Sure.
Why is it that there is an abundance of data around emotionally abusive relationships, and yet family court rarely knows how to identify these situations?
That's my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I can't wait to hear his answer.
Yeah.
The answer is because here's the answer. All right. Where do you work? What town do you work in primarily? Yeah.
Me? Oh, we're global, but we have more clients in California than anywhere else. We're
Okay.
based in New York and
And so
Connecticut, but we're
they're in
global.
courtrooms in big cities in Los Angeles and
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco. Where they
Yeah.
are here near where I live and where I do a lot of work in Montgomery County, Maryland. They built a whole separate courthouse just to house family cases because 7 out of every 10 civil cases in the state of Maryland is family related.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire family division. So you would say to yourself, wow, that's awesome. Well, it's not, because there's thousands and thousands of cases. So why aren't why aren't judges able to do that? Maybe there's some who aren't interested. There's better judges, just like there's better lawyers and there's better therapists. But assuming good intentions, I learned that from her. Assuming good intentions, these are folks that try to do their best, but they only have a certain amount of time. One. Number two, there are many cases that where people don't have the resources to bring in that mental health piece of things to a case, right? For somebody who's got plenty of money, it's easy to hire a private custody evaluation or get a mental health evaluation or get somebody evaluated to say, this is what this person does. This is what they're diagnosed with. This is the support for so-and-so, right? It's not so easy for someone who's struggling to put food on the table every night. So it's not that the courts aren't necessarily built for it, it's that there isn't enough space for it, and there's often not enough money.
Yeah. Yeah. Great answer. Another thing I was thinking from before when you were talking about the different roles of each of you, and Chris and I also have a book that came out last year. There's a little pile behind me, but in it, we talk about the importance of a client like ours or someone in the situation getting a team of support. And we talk about as if they are the surface of the table and having certain legs to keep them as stable as possible. So David, we always say you need a lawyer if you
Yeah.
can afford one. You need a lawyer, but a lawyer's job is to just translate your case into the law and be your ally and advocate, not your emotional support, because you're not trained for that. A therapist or a DV advocate like Julie and I, we are trained to deal with the mental health and the domestic violence, me in particular with that. But a therapist is working on your healing. They're not working on family court strategy. Then we have friends and family if people have not been isolated from friends and family, which of course is really common in these abusive relationships. Friends and family love you, but they don't really understand these our clients, when I'm talking about our community, like these really crazy situations where they'll be like, well, why doesn't the judge just do this, or why don't you just do that, or why doesn't your ex just blah blah blah? It's like, I don't know, because it doesn't work that way. And
Yeah.
then Chris and I, we tend to say we fill the gaps of what lawyers are generally not trained to do and therapists don't understand, because we're so entrenched in the family law culture. Like, we're not, I mean, in the family court culture, we're not lawyers, we don't give legal advice, but we are trained in coercive control and learning how to negotiate differently, because we only deal with this small number of high conflict cases. So it's all we see. So we're very comfortable with chaos, we say. So again, it's like a whole team of people that needs to help people in these really extreme situations, because they often go on for years and nobody else gets it.
Yeah, and the other thing that you talk about, Lisa, that's so important is family and friends only can go so far and long with what chaos is going on in your lives. And that's when I am so happy that somebody gets a therapist, because oftentimes I hear, oh, my friends are like done talking to me about this,
Yeah,
or they stopped answering the phone, or whatever it is,
yeah.
because people really only have so much bandwidth to go with you on that. And so I do think, whether you can afford to hire somebody, or maybe there's even community supports, that are, reasonable in price, or maybe even free. I think it's really important to get the right supports.
Yeah, and I think I love your table metaphor. I think it's very cool because I'm here thinking about my discussions with people, and I actually terminated representation with a client recently, and she and I were talking, and I was suggesting to her that she really needed to get a therapist because if one of those legs of the table cracks,
Mm,
then the rest of the table starts to
yeah.
sag, and she was not getting that support. And for me, I want the best possible her I can have, the best possible client that I can have. And so when I made those suggestions, this person took that as, well, you're too nice. You're too nice, and to be a lawyer, do what I want to
Yeah.
do. And I made it clear to her that it's not a question of too nice. It's a question of planning correctly. And if you're going to be the best do the best advocate for yourself, and you do ultimately need to be an advocate for yourself in my world. Your lawyer's there to do it for you too, but you do need to be able to be the best litigant that you can be, the best client that you can be, and therefore often need that mental health support. And I think it all does tie together, right? And I think your table piece is just an awesome
Are you
metaphor.
going to steal that?
No,
You
but I
can,
like it.
you can borrow
Maybe,
it. Yeah,
maybe.
well,
Yeah. Well, he'll give you a little credit
All
for
right,
that.
yeah, I got to do credit, or else I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that's okay. I trust that you won't plagiarize, but
No,
that's fine.
no,
Yeah,
no,
one of
no,
the
no.
things we say is we want our clients to be the teacher's pet of clients, for their attorneys in particular, because
Yeah,
we know that when attorneys like you, they will do nice things for you and not always charge you. So,
Yes.
absolutely.
and it also empowers them, and it helps them save time and money and energy. And the goal, especially for all the professionals who care, is we want them to be able to go on with their life independently, you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and especially for their children to be able to do so. The better that they are as a parent getting support, the better chance their children have to be as unscathed as possible. Okay, another really great question just came in. Do you think getting therapy is something that is supported in court, or does it work against you for mental health and fitness to parent? All right, I have my answer, but I want to hear what you
Uh,
guys want to say
well,
about
in this day and age, and
Mm.
part of it may depend jurisdictionally, right? So if you are in a rural area where there's not, and this isn't like the 1960s or 70s or even the 80s, but if you're in a rural area where people still look at mental health as being
A weakness.
a weakness, maybe it works against you, but in
that.
my world, it does not. And again, it gets back to what you're talking about, which is it's all about the presentation. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always upfront with people because what happens in cases, and we go back to our bullies and our abusers and the people who are trying to manipulate, is, oh, well, my significant other, my spouse was on Klonopin, was on this medication, saw a psychiatrist for 7 years, needed to go away for a week to get help. That's why it shows weakness, shows that they can't be a parent, shows that they can't do this. So what do? I don't wait for that to come out. We deal with it right up front. the first thing those judges hear from me is, let me tell you about Mr. Jones. Okay. So now it's a whole different prism. And I don't think it's a negative, particularly if it's done the right way. If you're hiding from it, trying to run from it, then that's probably not the best way to handle it. Doesn't look good. But in 2024, there's so much out there about mental health, and for better, for worse. And I think it's clearly for better, that more people are educated, or at least mildly educated, because they read whatever they read online or wherever. So I would not be afraid of that. I would just want it handled correctly when you talk to your lawyer about how we going to work with the fact that I'm in NA, or how are we going to work with the fact that I've been seeing a therapist for the last 7 years, or I had this, or was diagnosed with that bipolar. How do we
Yeah.
work? I can't be a good parent because I'm bipolar. Well, that's nonsense.
Yep. That's basically the same approach we take, is getting ahead of it. We talk about dealing with allegations and true allegations, like if you're an alcoholic, but we say you have an opportunity to present even better to the professionals involved with your case, because first of all, you're acknowledging and taking accountability for something that's happened, and you're also able to show how you're working on yourself. So
Right.
Absolutely.
so
That,
we have clients who say, my ex did all these bad things years ago, we're like, yeah, but what have they done about it? And they're like, well, they've taken care of it. And we're like, so you don't even bring it up, because then they will shine if
yeah.
they spin it the right way. So
Yeah.
I love that you gave that example. And Julie, I see you want to say something. Sorry
Yeah,
for
no,
jumping ahead of you.
I'm just thinking about, the work that David and I do together to help relationships, be stronger and more resilient. We really always start with the individual self-care needs of people, and we really encourage them individually to be taking care of themselves, because if you're not in a good place, emotionally, physically, you can't take care of anybody else, your children, your work, whatever it is. So as we're talking about this, I'm thinking that mental health services are part of that self-care, and that's where you really need to start, the foundation for everyone, and
Yeah.
how important it is. And I was hoping that I wouldn't hear a negative spin, because as a therapist for 35 years, I'm advocating for mental health to be just as important as going to the doctor for your meniscus tear, or your ulcer, or whatever it is. And I think I would like to think that people taking care of themselves in that way would be seen as a positive.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
what we've seen is that it's only positive, that people are thinking, oh, my kid needs therapy, and from what we've learned from interviewing so many attorneys, is they're like, ask for it. Most judges, especially
Yeah.
with a family going through divorce, if somebody wants their kid to get therapy, why would they refuse that?
Yeah.
they shouldn't, but some people do. So what happens is that there's a back and forth over, okay, um, um, little Tommy can go to therapy, but it has to be this therapist or that therapist. I don't like this
Mm.
kind of therapist. I want that. So the delays cause, what does it do? It causes problems for the child and so forth. But the issue with mental health, as we all know, unless it's obvious, is that you don't see it. It's not right in front of you. And a lot of folks who are narcissistic or have other personality issues see him and come across. I can't tell how many times I've heard from my client of mine says, "Oh, everybody loves my wife. Everybody loves the greatest." But as soon as the eyes are closed and the doors are shut, this is what you see. And so it's harder with mental health issues. It's harder for average people to understand it and see it. And certainly it's harder for judges to see it and understand it, despite the fact that I think that we've all sort of agreed that it's important to put
Yeah.
it out there and be supportive of that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have my questions, but we're getting these amazing questions from people looking. It says, and this is a little tricky. Do you think it's better to press charges on a case to safeguard your child given the repercussions? Is it better to build contact with, I'll just say, the other parent and child, or best to safeguard against future abuse? I'm guessing, like, if you believe that there's some kind of awful abuse going on, is it better to like take the legal route, or to still support the child's relationship with the other parent, knowing that that's a value that the court cares about?
If your child is being abused. It's like the fires that are burning closest and the fires that are burning further away.
Health and safety first, no matter where you are.
And if your child is being abused, you got to you got to help that. You deal with the ramifications of that later.
Yeah.
That's my perspective. You can't put the kid at risk because you're worried about how it might play out in 6 months, 7 months, 4 months, 8 months, whatever it is, in a courtroom. You got to protect that kid. So to me, it's a no-brainer. You have to, and Julie talks a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And you know all about it, and you apply the same thing. The biggest need in that piece is to protect your child.
Yep.
Yeah.
Safety trumps everything. If there's an unsafe situation, you have to act on that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Julie, we were talking a bit about this blaming culture. How do we deal with kids in this culture where there's so many people in our community who are dysregulated, and the effect that that has on our children, especially because our people are dealing with tremendous stress that does not dissipate for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, blame and shame, which are really go together, are just so destructive in so many ways. If you're blaming other people, you're not looking at your own behavior, you're not taking responsibility. And I always say to people, there's no devils and there's no angels. Right. You had some part in the relationship, some part in the interaction with the person. Could this person be mentally ill? Of course. Could this person not be acting in accordance with what you think they would do? Sure. But there's times that people trigger other people, and they have a part in it. So I think that really to understand, the blame piece is almost instinctual that we do that. Like, it's not my fault. I got a ticket. Well, why did you get a ticket? I don't know, because the cop was sitting right there. No, you got a ticket because you were going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, right? I think it's really important to also model for kids, even though you want to blame the spouse, the other parent, you want to kind of tell them what's up. I really do think that the blame, it just kind of creeps into all relationships and isn't really healthy. And we've worked with people that are, going through separation and divorce, and if at all cost, not blaming is really important. And then the other thing is the shame around, your behavior or things that you've done in the past. And I really like the concept of being upfront about things that have happened. So if you do have an addiction or you have had a mental health issue or still struggling with that, coming forward and taking ownership, upfront takes away the power of that other person saying, I'm going to, let people know that you have an alcohol problem. I'm going to let people know that you have bipolar, those kinds of things. So I don't know if those were kind of what you were looking for, but the top of my mind, blame and shame, those are kinds of the things that I think about.
Yeah. I was thinking about the quote that you love that I love now too. The more reflective you are, the more effective you are.
Yes, I love that. And that helps you not go to the blame piece so quickly, because I think that it lets you sit back and it lets you think about the situation, and then maybe even ponder what part you had in the situation, in the relationship,
Yeah.
in the interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, well, you had a couple of really good examples the last time we talked about what can a stressed out parent actually do? So this is ongoing. We know they have to take care of themselves. I have a couple of things that you had mentioned, but I want to see if you have other stuff too.
Are you testing my memory to see
Yeah.
if I can remember what we talked about? Well, first of all, if you're stressed out, your brain is not thinking as wonderfully as it can, right? Like, there's a part of your brain that when you're stressed goes into a fight and flight mode, sort of a more responsive mode. So you're not using your good brain when you're completely stressed out. So really, again, we go back to self-care. We go back to regulating yourself first. So sort of putting that oxygen mask on first when we're flying, and then helping other people, right? So I do think that, making sure that you're self-regulated, that your emotions are regulated, is most important, because you're going to do your best thinking, and you're also going to help your kids, who are probably struggling a lot with what's going on in the current family. So paying attention to that. Of course, we can talk about self-care for 3 more hours. Exercise, sleep, and don't undervalue sleep, because sleep is vital. Adults need around 6 to 8 hours on average of sleep. I know a lot of parents that really try to go under the radar, that are sleeping 3 4 hours a day. They're a night, and your brain isn't working. What you just can't function that way. You might be able to do it for a night or two, but it's going to catch up to you. So sleep, eating right, exercise, meditation. I can't really talk highly enough about meditation. I have personally seen several of my clients start meditation and change their brain. There is research around meditation, and meditation can be different for people. There's very formalized meditation, like the transcendental meditation, and there's also going for a walk in nature. There is also playing a musical instrument. There is also cooking your kitchen, doing crafts, doing artwork. It can be whatever you want it to be, but resting your brain away from screens, away from people, and really taking a minute. So, physical health, making sure you go to the doctor if you're not feeling well, making sure that you're getting support, that you're getting friends and, family support, and some positive social time. All those things are very important. And as I'm thinking about your clients, I'm thinking about how hard it is for them to find all the time in the world to be able to do those things. And when they're stressed out, it seems impossible. But helping them get to a calm place where they can even just do a 10-minute walk a day, something as simple as that.
Yeah. So I have two other things that you told me that you forgot to mention. One was taking really deep breaths, like working on breathing, which kind of
Yes,
ties with meditation,
yes.
and to go scream in a closet.
Yes, yes, you can go scream in a closet. You can get one of those punching bags in your basement, or hang it from the ceiling someplace, and yeah, let out some of that. Another thing I will mention is journaling. And I
Yeah.
don't if you have people journal, just to kind of keep. I know David will often recommend people to write things down, but journaling can be so helpful for the emotional piece of what's going on. So I recommend journaling, and it doesn't have to be like pages and pages. It could just be a line or two or something, to just kind of help you see where you are that day, and then also help you remember maybe where you've been. And sometimes there's comfort in knowing that you've been able to get through some of this hard stuff already.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we always like to highlight progress. And
Yes.
Yeah.
journal. I've journaled since I was 13, so I love journaling. I find that I journal more when I'm stressed out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't journal as much as when I'm content.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
I should stay on top of it, but I just don't. Okay, I see a question, but I'm gonna hold it because I think we're gonna get to this topic in a little bit. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I told you about the topic of the current book that we're working on, which is how to handle when an ex is trying to brainwash the kids against you in court and in life. And we're working on an online course about this. So often in these situations, there's this splitting, and I'm going to credit Bill Eddy with that term, where people think someone's all good or all bad, and kids get to that point too. So
Yep.
how do we make sense of what kids believe, or how do we help them process things where it's not that black and white thinking?
You go to your local paint store and you pick out a lot of gray tones. You start with the black and the white, and you have kids see that there's gray. And I've actually had, so black and white thinking is actually a very, very common cognitive distortion that many people have, and you can have it for many reasons. Sometimes it's about rigidity. So I've actually had clients that I have said, you need to dress in gray. You need to like I had them start, they even their clothes were black clothes or white clothes or whatever, and I'm like, you need to start living in the gray, you need to start to see the gray, and you need to start wearing the gray. So I know that that sounds like very silly, but go to the
I
paint store.
love it. I
Yep.
love it.
And put some gray swatches up someplace, and have kids embrace that there's no devils, there's no angels, there's no black, there's no white. It's in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, that's excellent. And that was such a simple
There
answer.
you go. I was so
She
excited.
likes the paint store.
I was so excited to share that with you because I've used it a lot with kids, and I've used it a lot with adults. And then, the other thing that I would say to you that we use, as a therapist, is that both things can be true at the same time.
Mhm.
And there's a fabulous book. It's called Double Dip Feelings. And it's about ice cream, but it really talks about the concept of, having two different feelings at the same time, and both of them can be true. And so you can be pissed at your dad because he didn't give your mom money, or he said he wouldn't do this, but he's still your dad, and you can still like the way that he, cooks pancakes in the morning, right? And really, like, having kids understand that both things can be true even though they seem very different.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why the term cognitive dissonance broken down into ice cream is coming up for me. But yeah, I'm writing that down. That's great. I'm going to check out that book.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let me go back to the question that we got before. You guys watching, like, these are awesome questions. How do you best support your child during these complex divorce situations? For example, stopping contact with the ex for safeguarding reasons. How do you explain it to like a 5-year-old without the adult complexities? Oh my God, these are awesome questions. Really hard.
Yeah.
Right, right. So, I mean, there's words, like, the other person isn't doing well right now. Maybe even illness, if there's an addiction or something happening that, dad or mom, they're not well now. They're not feeling well, and you can't be around them right now until they learn to, until they're better.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things. But I will, there certainly the language that you use, around kids. But what I would say is not to lie, not to
Mm-hmm.
lie in a good way or a bad way. Like, not to say that they're, like they're in a farm or something, to really give them like information that's age appropriate. And I know, I work with a lot of adopted folks, and I know that sometimes there's, the adoption story can be difficult to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is we just give them some very simple, words. It doesn't have to be too much. And then if they ask questions that are appropriate, you give them the real answers. You never lie to them, because eventually they're going to find out that you lied, and that breaks all kinds of trust and, bonds in relationships. So I'm sure that a 5-year-old, for safety reasons, that can't be around a parent, you just say, he's not using his good brain right now, or he hasn't made good decisions, and that's why we need to take a break from seeing him right now.
Yeah, yeah, great. As you're saying that about telling kids the truth, it's reminding me of years ago when I was in the very early process of my divorce. And I was thinking, how am I going to tell the kids? Because my ex and I were together for 20 years. And I went to an Al-Anon meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not Alcoholics Anonymous. That's for those of you that don't know, it's for people who love someone who's an addict or an alcoholic or even has a personality disorder, and learning emotional detachment, because we become so enmeshed and our lives become consumed with somebody else's issues that we can't really control. Anyway, my lawyer, my divorce attorney actually recommended that I go to Al-Anon. And I was such a mess in that first meeting, but I remember saying to the people there, how am I going to tell my kids like that we're divorcing and the reasons why? I don't know. It's similar question, like, what do I do? What's appropriate? And they didn't know me and they didn't know the details, but they said the same thing as you, Julie. They said, you have to make sure you figure out a way to tell the kids the truth, because if you don't, they said, first of all, if you don't tell the truth, your ex is going to spin it that you're the one that doesn't want the family to stay together. And they're going to turn you into the bad person. So you really need to get ahead of that. And
Yeah.
secondly, if the kids are going to find out the truth, like you say, later on in life, and it's going to traumatize them. They're going to be re-traumatized because they're going to have to rewrite history.
Yes. And that's why we tell kids that they're adopted from the minute they can understand. Sometimes even before that. One of our daughters was 3 years old, and she went around and she told people that she was a doctor because we told her that she was adopted, and that's what she heard.
Yeah.
But yes, the not telling the truth is very harmful for relationships, and even little kid relationships. So always tell the truth. You don't have to give it all, but you have to give something that is in line with the truth.
Right, right. Because I'm thinking about that sense of betrayal
Yes.
that people
That's
feel when they discover someone's been lying for
yes.
whatever reason for a long time. All right. What about when kids are shut down, when one parent says like not to do something, and then we talked a little bit about unsafe topics.
Mhm.
Can you get into that a bit? Like you mentioned that it's important, especially for kids in these situations, to help them open up about things and that we shouldn't have unsafe topics.
Right. Right. I think that as a parent, your reaction to things when it's brought up. So like if let's just say video games was an issue, and you're going, your ex lets the kid play video games, and then the kid comes home and says, well, mom lets me play video games all
Mm-hmm.
day. Your inclination might be, well, we don't play video games all day because it's really bad for your brain health and blah blah blah, and then you give it back and you shut down the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of instead of shutting down the conversation around video games, it would be great for you to ask some questions like, oh, okay, so you have unlimited video game use, at your mom's house. So tell me, about, like, how many hours are you spending, and do you know anything about like video games and how they affect your brain? Because I'm just wondering if that's something that that you ever think of. But asking questions about what it is versus shutting it down with like, research says, and this is why we don't do it,
Yeah.
right? And then it becomes an unsafe topic, and there may be, your kid might be playing you against the other
Oh yeah.
parent, which happens all the time. And I think if you don't, shut down kids on topics, then they're going to be more willing to talk to you about that. And then you can probably get at some of the root of what's really happening for the kid and how they're feeling about, maybe, sitting, maybe where their mom is, there's no friends around, or maybe there's nothing really else to do besides play video games, and really, digging into how they're feeling about being over there and playing video games all day,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
I also think as you're saying that, that could be an opportunity to have a kid figure out what can you do if you are so bored and there's nothing else to do. What are some other choices maybe you can figure out for yourself?
Yeah.
Because not everyone has to sit and just play video games. I mean, there's books, there's creative projects, but I think opening up that conversation is so important. It's
Yeah.
an
And I
opportunity.
think it would be really easy to get on the high horse about why, limiting video games is important, right? Like your defensive mode would be like, well, I don't do this
Yeah.
because it's bad for your health. Then you're done. You're done.
Yeah.
It's not going to talk to you about that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, David, you've been quiet for a little while. I have
Well,
on my
I've been married for 37 years. I know when to be quiet.
I love
I I was going to say one of the things that you were going to talk about, if you remember, is like anything that tends to fail and not work in real life, like either on what Julie's saying or just in with kids from what you've seen in these situations when parents are engaged in these long legal battles, what they bring home that ends up affecting the kids.
Well, you know, I think that, and what I tell people is that first of all, common sense is not all that common. If it were, then I would not have been doing this job for as long as I have been, because people would have figured it out without me around, right? So what does that mean in the scope of your question? What that means is as a parent who's involved in a divorce, who's involved in a separation, who's got children who are of a certain age, whether they're teenagers, and they take different things, or they're younger kids and they soak up different things. You have to be aware of that. So when your son comes home and says, I don't want to go to dad's house anymore because he makes me watch, oh, I don't have anything to do, I sit and watch video games and I can't be with my friends because all the rest of my friends were doing X, Y, or Z. It's very easy for that parent to say, okay, well, let's see if we can keep it so you don't have to go to your dad's next time. I'll tell him that's not right, right? Eh, not so
Yeah.
good, right? Not so good. So, and it's not smart. It might be what you think is correct. It's not smart. But so what's the right answer to that? The right answer is, your dad loves you. He has different things at his house than we have here. And why don't you tell him, or why don't you talk to him about, you wanted to do the sleepover at Steve's house, or you wanted to do this or that. Now, again, the problem with that approach is that not every kid has the ability, whether they're a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, or a 15-year-old for that matter, to be able to have those kinds of difficult conversations with your parents. Think about when you were growing up, and you wanted to talk to your mother or father about something. You could, many of us would get this kind of real nervous, or nervous. And
Mhm.
we may not have grown up in a situation where we're in two separate households. So these are difficult issues for kids. They're very difficult issues for parents, and for parents who are under the microscope of a potential custody trial. You got to assume that everything you say, everything you write, everything you do is going to come back out. And it's worse with kids. Why? Because kids hear what they want to hear,
Right.
right? Your kid, my son, the other parent calls and says, my Joey called and said you told him X. Well, no, I didn't tell him that. Well, yes, you must have told. And then all of a sudden, and then what happens 7 months and you're in front of judge whoever? Well, what did you observe when he came over your house, came back from your mother's house? Well, this is what he was very upset because of X, Y, or Z. And so it's a very it's a difficult minefield to tiptoe around. It really is. But use your brain. Think about before, if you can. It's that same thing we talked about before. Take that breath. Take Julie's breath when you're talking about meditating, but use it in this moment. Take that breath. Take that 2 seconds, that
Count
5
to 10.
seconds, and then, or if you're not sure what to say, let me come back to that. What do you want for dessert? Or
Mhm.
something. Just refocus the conversation, then think about it, but then come back to it. Don't
Yeah.
not answer the question ultimately, but
Yeah.
answer it in a smart.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome question or comment, and I would love to hear what you have to say because, well, you'll know. Okay. So she says, I think it's wrong to tell the kids their other parent loves them. That's not my job and is misleading when the other parent's actions show differently.
Well, I understand that feeling. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I don't agree with it in any number of reasons.
Okay.
One, because the other parent probably does love that child. Probably. There are some of us that are parents out there that shouldn't have been parents. We don't like kids. We don't care about kids. We don't love kids. Number one, it's probably true. And number two is what's going to be repeated. Let's say your child's in a custody case and there's a best interest attorney or guardian ad litem that's appointed to represent that child. And that guardian, that lawyer who's representing the child, who has the opportunity to report to the court what their investigation shows, who has the obligation in certain states to represent that child, just like the lawyer for the mom and the dad do. What's that lawyer going to find out when he or she talks to your child? What did your mom say? Well, she told me my dad loves me, but she was worried about X, Y, or Z.
What if she just doesn't say anything
That's pretty.
about the other parent loving them? What if it's just
Well,
no comment?
what's the kid going to interpret? I mean, I'm not saying you should volunteer it 26 times a day. That's
Yeah.
not my suggestion. What I'm saying to you is that when you have a child who says, "Why does my what he does this or she does that, or why do they make it so hard for me?" I don't think you should. I don't think you have to go negative. I hate to borrow from Michelle Obama. You go positive, because is it misleading? Probably not in most cases. In some cases, maybe it is.
And
But
you know what? Every parent's different and loves in
sure.
a different way. And you can love somebody and not act kindly towards them or do the best thing for
See,
them.
so let me just finish for a second. So when this person says it's not my job, yes,
Mhm.
it is. It is your job. It's your job to be the best parent that you can be. All right. And if that means try to make your kid feel a little bit better by saying that your dad loves you, but this is the way they act and this is what's wrong, their brain, what Julie was talking about. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's not doing their job for them. That's doing your job. Because in situations where, and there are a lot of them, where you have one parent who's just a terrific, just does a terrific parenting job, and you have another who's just either is disinterested or just doesn't. Maybe some cases, and we've talked about this, there's some people who don't have that gene, right? They don't get it. They don't know.
Mhm.
It may not come from a bad place. Here I go talking like she is. It may not come from a bad, but they don't they don't get it. And even if it comes from a mean place, and I'm excluding the abuse for a moment because we talked about that
Hmm.
separately, but even if it comes from a place where they say things to the child to try to hurt me,
Mhm.
all right. No, it's not your job to say, yeah, and it's hard. You have to throw vomit in your mouth when you say things like that. And I'm not saying you should volunteer it and say it over and over again. What I am saying is that you have a child whose brain continues to develop until they are 26 years old.
26.
I learned that. Okay, and it's important for them to see,
Hmm.
not only as a child, but they're going to remember that when they get older. When I talk to mom about this or that, this is how she handled it. This is what she told me. I
And the
remember that a
kids
lot.
ultimately decide and figure it out.
Well, that's true.
They do. They
That's
figure
true.
it out.
But like I said, I don't mean to argue with your listener about it's not my job, but I do feel that, and again, everything is different. There's not a blanket rule. You know from doing these cases, there's not one thing that you apply that works in every case or that everybody has to do. But you need to give that some thought. That this whole concept that it's not my job to say their mom loves them or their dad cares for them or whatever the case may be. I think you ought to give that a little bit more thought.
Yeah, it's a definitely a landmine in our community in particular.
I know.
All right, so we'll put that off to the side. I don't even know what time it is, but I know we've talked in a while.
28, 7:28. Yeah, so we're getting close to the end here.
We went way over. All right, sorry about that. But
That's okay.
the last thing that I want to make sure we cover before you tell people how to reach you is, Julie, you had talked about how we can expand on like 5 spots that like kind of feelings that kids go through
Mhm.
when they're going through divorce. And we talked about the adoption
Yeah.
process, and I thought that is the same thing. Can you talk about those 5 stages a bit?
Or so we call them the stuck spots in adoption, and the loss, the grief, the identity. And it's funny because in adoption the identity piece is very different, especially if you're coming from a different country, or you're a different color than your parent. With adopt with a divorce, with a divorcing situation, your identity comes into question. Where do I fit, right? Who am I? And part of the natural process of development is identity formation. It's one of our jobs that we do. That's why we rebel as teenagers, right? So think of the complexity around the identity when something is done one way at one house and something is done another way at another house. It could be as simple as we take our shoes off one place, or we eat, pizza on Friday nights, right? Like, who am I? And that becomes very difficult. And again, sort of the identity piece, the loss, we could go on for hours about all the losses that are going on for many people in this situation, and then the grief and helping kids really understand how to grieve and how to express their sadness. And I know we do a lot of great work around making sure kids know that they had nothing to do with it, that it's not their fault. um, and then actually another stuck spot for adopted kids is missing information, and I think that there's a lot of that here
Yeah.
today. We just talked about a lot of questions and missing information and who says this and who says that and how do you do that. So those are the things that kind of like overlap for me as we're talking
Yeah.
about, that are really important to kind of dig into and think about.
Yeah. Well, oh my God. Thank you so much for going so overtime with me. This has been an awesome conversation. How can people find you?
Awesome. Well, we have our website is www.thebulitts, that's thebulitts.com. We're on Instagram at the Bulitts, on Facebook at the Bulitts. We have a YouTube channel, the Bulitts, and we have a bi-weekly podcast that comes out. We have another one, a special Father's Day podcast episode that's coming out on Thursday called Conversations for Couples. We're also on LinkedIn and
YouTube, and yeah, anywhere you want to look,
anywhere.
we will be there. We will be there. And we love getting questions. We love talking about, all kinds of topics. I mean, we really are in the business of keeping couples together, but we definitely work with couples that are unraveling their relationship and how to do that in the best way that they can. We also work with people that are trying to get back into relationships and different relationships than they had the first time, and helping them, look for foundations of healthy relationships and those kinds of things. So we're happy to talk to people.
All right. Well, thank you again so much. This has been a pleasure.
It's been
Thank
awesome.
you
Thanks,
so much,
Lisa.
Lisa. Thanks
And
for having
thanks to you, Chris, wherever you
us.
are out there.
Take care.
All right. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.